Welcome to this week's episode of the Lumber Word. I think it is episode 160. We're just going to go with that. 160. We have a recurring guest, Matt. Thanks for getting Sig on. Sig Thomas. Sig, thanks for jumping on again.
Glad to be here.
Where'd you say you were out to last week? Where'd you get back from?
I was in Texas. I was in the Dallas area and then over in Longview, Gilmer, in that area, and did some visit on some plants. And everybody's pretty busy, I have to say.
Damn.
Seems to be quite a bit of pressure on the home center supply side, especially some particular items. One item, one of the large home centers was looking for over 3 million pieces that they wanted pretty quickly, and because of the import tariffs, there's a lot of restriction on product coming in. So it's starting to show its colors a little bit. The duty aspect from Brazil, that side, Taita, South America mainly, obviously.
Sure. Well, appreciate you being on here. We'll want to kind of go quick synopsis summary. Talking to some people. We did the podcast late last week, Thursday afternoon, and we kind of went through all the stages of death and talking about where we were and what we thought was going on. And literally, I think it's right after we ended that afternoon, markets started getting sneaky again. We mentioned in that podcast how a lot of people were piling on to the Canadian mills to ship trucks across. And all of a sudden that kind of disappeared this week. All the Canadian mills came out and said, hey, we're upping our freight guides $50 a thousand on across the board, and we're off the market on trucks, and we're not shipping anymore. And so we've noticed studs take off in spruce. I'm talking in the spruce world here. And a lot of things are starting to pick up in the little pig farm we live in. And one thing my feeling, and I'll throw it out there when we go through the other species, it's not just the lumber industry that works on a just-in-time basis. It's everything, right? And when you have that small amount of extra trucks, just like production in lumber comes off, and you go into seasonal strength in trucking, and you have things that haven't shipped in a while on the MAGA side, like frac sand and all of the other things that are expensive hauls. Lumber takes a back seat. And anybody that we've talked about last 3 weeks, if people have been running a just-in-time inventory and hoping they can get trucks all the way from the north down to Florida or across the country, that ain't going to happen cheap anymore. And I really think people are going to have to buy a couple extra weeks of inventory on items that ship far. And I was going to jump to Charles first, because my feeling is in Southern Yellow Pine, a lot of this escalation in price is, one, because treaters buy, but two, you're paying $30 or $40 more maybe in freight than you paid last year at this time for a haul to you, which raises your delivered price pretty significantly. So Charles, I saw print come out last night and all the pine numbers were up. What are they really trading at? If they're up, $20 on print, what's 4-inch and 6-inch and all that trading at?
4 and 6-inch are a healthy 40 to 65 over. It's actually kind of wild how quickly things have escalated since the last time we did the show.
Yeah.
Now you bought everything, so you can say this now, right?
Yeah, I'm not on the wrong side of anything, Ash.
Okay.
No matter how well I'm hedged, you still get in trouble, man, when things change this fast.
Yeah.
And a big piece of that is because, as I always beat the drum that we're a truck market and things change quickly.
Yeah.
Right. But if you buy from one mill, you pass two before you get it to your end user, you just got a better delivered price. Well, the problem is that now that delivered price from all of those mills are about the same, because there's those day rates, no matter if you got 100-mile freight advantage, is still the same. You're talking freight rates are up since December a solid 35%, I would say. Yeah. And that's a big deal when you have to ship the volume that you need to make a living in the lumber business, right?
Right. So,
But what surprises me more than anything is how spruce and the pig farm, as you call it, that y'all live in and exist in, is kind of flat. Like if you look at charts and look at price action over the past 2 years, I mean, pine has kind of led the way, and then spruce followed, and then spruce pine kind of died off a little bit because they switched back to SPF. But to Greg's point, and he's mentioned it, and maybe those guys, and I think you have too, maybe those guys that were flip-flopping back and forth pretty vigorously are just making a decision to stick with pine, which could make things real tricky.
Yeah, well, flip over to Greg then. Greg, you were selling some people this week that do the pine or the spruce, and I mean, definitely an overlay. We're probably getting closer to spruce. 10s, 12s, 8s, 10s, and 12s being undervalued at this point compared to pine.
I think into the, middle Atlantic, Northeast, and into the Midwest right now, spruce across the board in 4-inch is cheaper delivered in spruce than in pine. I mean, we had a customer yesterday that flips between the two on a weekly basis. We hadn't gotten orders for the last month or so, because pine was coming in underneath the spruce price. We got all that business yesterday. So, and Charles, to your point about why, how is it that spruce isn't moving? I had multiple conversations with people mills saying, hey, we have the least amount of lumber that we can look at in terms of our inventory and projections that we ever have. We're really surprised that the market's not going up more. And I went, well, let me give you a little, like physics. Sig, you'll appreciate this. Newton's law. An object at motion tends to stay at motion. An object at rest tends to stay at rest. And so if there's a catalyst that gets the spruce going, it could probably run 20, 30, 40, 50. I mean, Matt, I told you I hate sold some stuff last week. I will say full disclosure. I have covered all of the rest of my March shorts this week. And so now maybe the spread can go out to 40 or $50 and March can drop down another 15 or 20 now that I'm out. But my when I look at the chart, I look at the May chart and I go, wow, I could see it projecting up, 615, 620 without a whole lot of trouble. And, if it's able to close above that 620 number, it's a scamper to $700.
Yeah.
It's a scamper up there. But, I'll go back to something I've said the last few weeks is, at worst right now, the market is a trading range market and sharply sideways.
We're not far from
the transportation issues end up being enough of a catalyst to change anything.
We're not very far away from a supply shortage driven market because all the people that buy trucks from us are going to be frustrated with the amount of time it takes for us to get it to them. And I'm shocked at what I'm paying for trucks this week as opposed to last Thursday when we did the podcast. And so I'll give you an example. There's a local haul that I've done many, many, many times in my career, and the typical freight rate is between $4.50 and $5.25. I'm paying $7.50 today for a 97-mile haul. I mean, it's so from my perspective as a seller and a buyer, because I got to buy this stuff on the open market. Some of it's contracted, but mostly I'm buying this stuff on the open market. Is okay, I've already bought all this lumber and it's slow to get to me in the first place, right? Like the rail cars aren't just speeding down to Texas right now. Everything's slower. And then it takes longer and it costs way more money to move it around. So what's my incentive to just run to the sales side and go, yeah, I want to sell all this? I don't. So what lumber I had budgeted in my mind to get me through the end of April is now going to last me probably till the end of May, or at least the middle of May. And Matt, I'm not in a hurry to sell it. I'm not. I mean, because it's taken a long time to move it and it's cost me a lot to move it. I'm just going to let the market pay me the extra price on the freight, because if I book a truck thinking it's going to cost me $550 and it costs me $750, well, I just gave up $9 a thousand of margin, and it's not my fault. I mean, we're trying to do a service for people, but the people that really are going to need us are going to have to pay that extra freight, because I don't want to subsidize their business. And it's hard. It's not like, oh, we got 20 truckers lined up to take our loads. We're having to scamper to find, multiple trucks a day out of a certain reload. So the business model is kind of broken right now. We're getting back into situations where when a supply chain breaks down, what happened during COVID. I'm not saying we're in COVID timeframe, but you remember when people went and front run all the toilet paper at Costco. That's what's happening now in lumber. People are going to end up double buying inventory, and the backside of this thing's not going to look so great, but in the front side looks like it's going to go sharply higher here in my mind.
Matt.
But I mean, like Matt, the marketplace has gotten used to, I feel like the people have squeezed their inventory days down because they were able to do that. And, are you really, it gets back to like, where's business? Is business the same or better than it was? And, my sense is that it's at worst marginally better. And so you're not really double buying if you're extending your inventory days, if you're going to burn through that.
Yeah, just to make a point on that, just real quick, one of the largest customers out there is refusing to pay extra for the freight difference. So there's actually probably a contracting inventory situation going on because people are being stubborn about these freight rates and they don't want to pay them. So
is that out of a VMI sig, or is that
no? That's a regular. You guys all sell them. You'll see it sooner or later.
A big one. Yeah, they're not gonna pay the extra freight. They're not cooperating.
Right.
How do they know? How do they know? I mean, like, you charge, if you sell them delivered at a price, how do they know what the freight is?
I don't know.
If I'm just asking if I'm selling a 2x4 at 16 at $670 and my freight goes up $20 and I say $690 delivered, how do they know what that freight is buried in there? I'm just curious.
Well, they know what they paid last week, and if random didn't go up, and then you're $20 higher this week, then $20 is freight, right?
Yeah, no, I see what you said. It sounds like they may run out of lumber then, because I mean,
well, to Matt's point, it's funny is, remember during COVID, people would go like, "Oh gosh, is there a lumber shortage?" No, there was no shortage. There was no shortage at all. Everybody could get all the lumber that they wanted, but it was allocated based on who was willing to pay the most money. And the guys that were paying the market price, they had plenty and plenty of lumber. It was no problem at all. People that didn't want to pay would say, "Oh yeah, I can't get it." Well,
So back.
No, I see it a little differently, Greg. I mean, I feel like I agreed with you fully back then when you were saying, "Hey, there's lumber around." But my quibble with that is that you could buy the lumber and stay in the market. You just had to wait a long time to get it. I mean, so if you were trying to run your cycle on a 4-week, turn rate, well, you had to extend it to 8 weeks because it just took twice as long to get all your lumber processed and moved. And I think that we're in the beginning stages of something like that right now. I mean, and I'm recognizing it all of a sudden because I've lived through this before, and now I'm seeing it again. And I don't know if this is going to last for a week or 10 weeks. But it's also happening at the wrong time of the year for me and my customers, because this is when they're the busiest and when their volume increases naturally because of the time of the year. So it's a double whammy time wise, and that's why I say it's gonna push things sharply higher. We're getting people scrambling to just buy things now. The West is so much busier than you would anticipate with how cheap the East has been. We're getting run over with orders at our mills and on our inventories this whole week. I mean, it's been busy at much higher prices than what you said you could pay for it last week. Much higher.
Well, I mean, Greg and I pinged one of the big Eastern mills today. They sent us a dimension list over, and I said, "Hey, can we look at your studs?" They're like, "We don't have any." I'm like, what? What do you mean you don't have any? It's like they have studs all the time, and like they were showing no studs. So, Greg, good job going in and taking the other mill off the market on all theirs.
Make them truck it to you.
No, they won't.
Hey, Matt, I was just looking at So, I mean, would you say, based on midweek, I mean, there weren't really a lot of change. 6-inch was up $8 midweek, and Doug fir 4 and 6-inch was up $4 in green. The rest of and green and dry. Like, are the trading market prices $5 to $10 above that, or is it $20 above that?
I think green 2x4 is up 20 from last
Okay.
week, and 2x6 is up 40.
Okay.
And then dry 2x4 and 2x6 Doug fir were probably up about 25 from what we were willing to take a week ago. Studs we kind of started the week and ended last week with a little bit of uncertainty as to whether studs were going to go sideways or up, because it didn't feel like they could go down much further. There was plenty of cheap bids out there. And, you can kind of tell when a market's at or near a bottom when you get all the brokers and then the job shipper guys throwing you large volume offers at 40 off, right? That typically is a good tell if you're playing poker. And so we were seeing that, and we ignored it because we don't want to do that. I mean, that would be unnecessary. And then all of a sudden here it's Wednesday, and there's just been a whole nother round of studs getting sold at our numbers and higher. We're raising the prices a little bit. So, there's nothing cheap in the West. Like, the cheapest thing in the world was green Doug fir 2x4. And
you said that last week.
It's up 20, and it's probably going to go up another 20. It'll be closer to 400 mil instead of 350 mil pretty soon. So, I don't know what to say other than, like, my costs are going up everywhere across the board, whether it's dimension lumber or studs or all low grade, whether it's economy, kiln wets, number 3 utility. That stuff's really hard to buy. And in some cases, I've been able to buy 2 and better at or near the number 3 price on a delivered basis to the south. So now that gives you a strong floor for 2 and better prices too. Like, you're not going to get 2 and better prices go below number 3 prices for very long. That would be a huge bounce from that point.
So interesting. Interesting. I wrote down some comments that people told me this week, and as simple as they may sound, like, I've heard, one guy said, there's nobody out there shorting anymore, right? Where you've got those big floors where they put up on the board how many people have sold what during the days, and a lot of people just don't want to have the walk of shame with people coming by where they don't do anything, where there's a lot of business taken prior to this week's short, where I saw some of that getting covered. There's also something, put that one guy that I always quote against, or girl, however you want to put it, since we're pronouns here, or that one
person.
Yeah. You know how you quote, and they said, oh, this one person came in $30 under with faster freight. Well, that person's not around anymore to quote. Or they're not giving those numbers anymore. The other thing we've noticed in the last few weeks, especially carloads to the southeast and other place, are killing truck freight now. So we've seen a more carload freight heading to the southeast in places that we were getting trucks a lot cheaper for. And another comment from a guy last night, and I never thought about this. He goes, hey, and Sig, you live in this world. He goes, there's some multifamily jobbers out there that, their things are about as big as a decimal point right now, because they got to cover some stuff for, the next 3 or 4 months out, and they don't have a lot of inventory sitting on the ground. That's their game. They stay short and do it. And are you seeing any of that, Sig?
Yeah, we see that. We just see overall, the multi-housing is only 5% of our entire consumption. The bigger deal is now R&R, is now getting into the mid to high 30% of the consumption. It's really, I don't pay any attention to multi anymore because it's just too small for us to kind of gauge the market. And 5% versus 35% is a big needle mover, right? The 35 is, the 5 is not. So that's kind of where I'm coming from in these days. Single family is still obviously up there in the 20s. But now you got the industrials coming on top of it, as Matt says, with low grade. With all these tariffs and all the manufacturing we're going to start in the United States, there'll be a lot more pallet demand and crating demand and all these things. We looked at a large manufacturer in last week that does crating and palleting and glass crating and all that stuff. That's going to really hit home on the low grade side.
Yeah. Charles, on the Southern Pine side, like, are mills calling? Are they making outgoing calls right now, or can you ever tell the difference between that, or do they? I mean, you know what I mean? Where they're making outgoing calls versus not. Do you ever look at that as kind of like a KPI? Like, Greg, and the reason I said that is, I go, hey, Greg, what do you think these guys have? And he goes, well, how many times have they called us this week? I'm like, none.
I mean, that's 100. I mean, it's completely a tell. And
Yeah.
I mean, there's a mentality of come and get me. I mean, to be honest, and that's why the premiums are as large as they are. I mean, I feel like, if you look at some baseline 6-inch prices that are on print around $400, plus or minus $15, right? And you got a $40, $45 premium. I mean, that's 10%, and people are paying it. And I to this day, I still don't know. I'm still trying to wrap my head around how they play this order file game and what the benefit is, right? For Southern Yellow Pine in a 7-day window, or maybe even a 10-day window at this point. But to reiterate what Matt said, I mean, yeah, the front of this thing's going to look great. It's the backside that I think people really need to pay attention to, because you've got prime example is other commodity markets that we're active in as an organization. The run up was fun. It's the backside and the give back that people barely pay attention to, because they're high on dopamine, and we're looking at it from the alternate.
You
right?
got to plan
How do
ahead.
we weather this storm to position ourselves to prevent from any give back on the other side? And that's the point that gets overlooked.
That's called playing defense, Charles. That's called playing defense.
Escalator
right now
going up
offense.
and elevator going down. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it takes 2 months to get the price up 100, and then it takes 2 days of bad futures activity and no phone calls to have that $100 just disappear.
Yeah, but if
defense wins championships, though, Greg. That's the point.
Yeah, defense and rebounding, baby. Defense and rebounding.
Actually, the first thing that wins championships is everybody has a good attitude and is on the team. Then you got defense and offense. Question: are we gonna So I'm getting cars quoted now for thoughts the other day, 323 and 330. And Charles, you said order file. Where is the order file on stuff right now? Greg, order file, Eastern Mills, they're not quoting trucks right now for the most part. And that's gonna take a little bit of that extra to the Northeast and some other places that trucks were getting quoted to. Where do you think cars are actually in trucks? What's the order file right now?
I mean, it's 323 or 330. I mean, that's one of the things is where you get guys, once they get that sold, they're not going to quote anything else, because we got to remember, if you're a spruce mill, you're still losing $100+ $1,000, maybe more, depending on your mill and what it makes, etc. I mean, you're still losing lots and lots of money here. So, I mean, that's my issue. There's there's a balance that they have. They need to keep selling so that they can ship everything that's dressed, because they need the cash, because cash is king. They're all cash poor, and they need to turn finished inventory into cash. So, and I think that's part of the reason why spruce prices aren't up more, because they don't feel like, they're afraid to raise the price to shut off the sales. I did have one thing. Tomorrow we have January housing starts will be released tomorrow. They're still catching up from last fall's shutdown, so they're a month behind.
They'll be down, right?
My best guess is that the number is going to be, better than it was, because January has a really wild seasonal adjustment, and you don't need to do a lot in January for it to be a good headline number. I think that'll all come back out in March and February because of the bad weather.
Right. Okay. So that's when the weather was February.
Right. So I mean, we're really lagged there. You know, I'll be interested to see what the the permit number may be more interesting because that's a little better in terms of looking forward. But I mean, we did have existing home sales came out yesterday or the day before.
Yes,
They were up, they were better. We got the lowest mortgage rates right now since 2022. We're sub 6% now. We'll see if that holds. I saw the 10-year ticked up here the last couple of days, but it's still only 4.2%. So, I mean,
Craig, there's some front running going on by Citibank, JP Morgan, Wells, the top four banks, all front running the mortgage. They're down around 5.39 if you give them 20%, or they're 5.7 if you only give them 5% down. So they know rates are going to head lower eventually. And so they're front running it, obviously. They know. That's just the bottom line.
Yeah, the big boys are still subsidizing rates for new buyers on new construction too by 2 or 2.5 points. And so I do want to talk about the second half of the year. I feel like, okay, we've already made it through most of the first quarter. We're going into the second quarter. It appears as though there's going to be a supply squeeze, at least for a while in the second quarter. And that we're going to probably have to weather some higher prices and longer lead times for at least the next month, probably a couple months. Then the backside, you get into June, July, August, you're in the hot summer months. The pace of building might slow down a little bit. I have my doubts about the second half of the year. I mean, I'm going to, I guess, say I'm sort of neutral on it. The big boys will keep building. I don't think that nothing's going to slow them down, but the mid and small guys, I think, are going to have fewer crumbs to work with. And I'd love to be wrong. I'd like to hear your guys' thoughts on how you see things playing out for the back half of 2026.
Yeah, I was telling Matt earlier, I'll just jump in. We're going to have the 4th of July 250th birthday party. Then the election syndrome will start deeper in September, October. And I would expect more government positive news today. For instance, they came out with a bill that was submitted today, and both Democrats and Republicans wanted to go through, so there's not a big fight about regulation on developments and zoning laws. So they want to loosen up development for real estate, for home building, obviously. And they're also changing financing for manufactured housing. They're working on that as well. That's also in the bill. However, this bill, Trump says, if you don't get voter ID, I'm going to veto the bill. So there's the standoff, right? He wants voter ID, and I agree with that. And the only way we're going to get this bill through if we also get voter ID through. No more mail-in. Anyway,
I mean, has anybody ever seen the list of the things that you need to show an ID for? And the list of the things that you don't need an ID for?
Right. I've seen that.
I mean, it's like the silliest thing that I've ever heard is the argument that, I mean, if you need to show an ID to shovel snow in New York, then, I mean, like, it's a I mean,
we used to fight to go get fake ones when I was 18. Like it
I
was.
had a big one when I was 16 years old, but then again, I was shaving.
Yeah, you had a beard. You were the guy that bought beer for people in seventh grade.
You mean it's easy for people to get a fake ID? Oh.
Well, that's all good. So, all right, Matt, I think, well, yeah, I need to get more on the positive side because I think the big surprise would be housing. Everybody expects us just to plod along here. And we know that never happens. Things always finish up. I think the back half of the year will probably be better than expected. Which if we look at lumber, and maybe Southern Pines telling us that and everything else that, and people anticipate that, treaters, I think we're going to be a little bit better than expected, and numbers are going to probably stay up here. on lumber. And again, I don't know anything that's going to come out on any new lumber pricing data. Is it next year we're going to get new numbers? They'll readjust again for quota duty, that kind of stuff.
I think they do it every year, Ash.
Okay.
No, you get new numbers. You get new numbers in August again,
Yeah.
and they'll come out. Hey, big surprise. So were prices higher or lower? It's like, what is it, a 2-year lag? Right?
Yeah, it's going to go down.
It's going to go down marginally in
Yeah.
August, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's not going to be. We'll probably get the first read on it here pretty soon.
Charles, what's your feeling in the back half of the year to Matt's question?
I think glass half full is something that we're all going to have to adopt. I think numbers are going to stay higher. I don't think we're going to see, down in the doldrum numbers and trends that we've seen over the past couple of years, just fairly simply because of the lack of supply, right? I mean, I agree with you, Ash. I think, in Southern Yellow Pine, 4 handles are going to be the new norm. It's not going to be, a low of 260 and a high of 420. It's going to be a low of 395 to, a medium trade mean, I guess, of 460, 470, right? So there's going to be better pricing, but I guess the gray area is, when does demand actually kick off, especially single family, because of how big of a consumer it is. And if that catches a bid, so to speak, or some wind in its sails, it get real sporty on the back half, and there won't be a give back. You'll have, a very, very sliver of time to kind of reposition yourself before you got to go forward.
That's and Matt, Greg, Sig, Charles, like, if everybody, we've talked about this at the beginning, when everybody decides that they need an extra 2 weeks of inventory, which in my opinion, many of the smaller independents already are. When they do decide they need an extra 2 weeks or a month of inventory, which I don't think we've seen yet, like, how far will that take us? Will that take us into May on pricing, or am I being way too optimistic and like hitting the crack pipe thinking that way?
Dude, look, we talk about 6-week cycles in the lumber business, and this would be week 0, right? So that puts you into May. That puts you into late April right there, and now you're basically, you just fall asleep for a week and you're into May.
Yep.
So I mean, that's why I say I think I have enough lumber bought now, either in the inventory or on its way, that because of all the slowdowns in trucking and the higher costs of doing business, I'll be able to naturally let that last a little bit longer. My biggest fear is I'm looking at 4-year high prices to enter back into the market on number 3 in utility. And like I said, there's some things I can buy in 2 and better, standard better, that are at the number 3 price that I would have to pay to go buy more. Do I want to do that? And every fiber in my being says no, I don't. But are we going to have the kind of market that we did in the first run up during the COVID years, where we just eclipse those new record and we start setting some new multi-year highs? Like, am I going to be selling 2x4 number 3 with a 6 handle in front of it on trucks here?
2x4 10s and 12s in 2 and better and 14s or so are a little bit cheaper anyway. If you have dual customers, you kind of have a natural hedge on that, don't you?
Yeah, 12s and 14s are what I would target, really, for the. I don't want 10s because they just don't move that fast. I end up having to write them down and sell them to Iowa. But no, not kidding. And then, but I mean, if 10-foot 2 and better is cheap enough, you can buy those and put a chop saw on and turn them into 116s. And now all of a sudden they're worth $600 delivered somewhere. So that has another alternative solution to it, right? Or if they're really cheap, you can just cut them back to 9s and throw away the 1-foot trim. So
no offense to the people in Iowa. I was just there this weekend.
Hey, I was going to say, I have a lot of good friends in Iowa.
I love Iowa.
Matt, to go back to you on 4 years ago, it's really hard, generally speaking, to compare anything from 4 years ago. How many mills are running then? How many housing starts do we have? You know, how many imports did we have? It's really hard to go by price and history because it's completely different, not completely different, but it's somewhat always different than what it is today.
Yeah.
People say, well, you know, history repeats itself. Yeah, but in a different way. Because
Different variables affect it.
Yeah.
Agree.
No,
I
I'm really
agree.
curious to see what this conversation is like on May 15th, right?
Yeah.
I mean, this is going to be an interesting market with all the stuff that's happening all of a sudden. This is not like we saw this coming, 3-4 weeks ago. I knew it would be busier for me in March. It always is. It's just the nature of my business.
the home sales and the mortgage applications really told you that demand was picking up. You know, if you look at a 3-month or 6-month mortgage applications for new home sales, and you look at new home sales also, new home sales were down around 610,000 annual rate, and now we're over 740,000 annual sales rate. So you're seeing the pickup there, you know, obviously a little bit. So that's the big change that I saw to justify the increase in pricing.
So just so I can highlight for everyone, how like personal things can get. As I said, is like over the last couple days, I covered the rest of my March shorts. I said I don't need any. Like the roll's not enough to entice me at like $25, and you know what? No sooner have I gotten out of all of them is that now the March is offered down $8, and the only bid is another $30 below that.
34.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, this is why we have a disclaimer on the podcast. This is merely for entertainment purposes.
Have you ever
make sure you consult your own financial advisor.
Have you ever noticed that as soon as you enter or exit your futures trade, that it does the exact opposite? It's uncanny. It's almost like they're just waiting for Greg to call.
It's very, very personal. I feel like I've been violated. Yes, I feel like I've been violated. And I came in this morning and I told Ash, I go, God, I'm just gonna be I'm all bulled up here, boom, 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 and then I like, oh well, okay.
So where's the bids at? Right? Where's the bids in March?
538 bid 2 right now in March.
So if you could. So like, at what point do people just go off long and take delivery? Then if they can get some of that.
I mean, at 538 plus $25, you're only $25 higher or lower to get to the number 3 sales price.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
sold this week.
Right. Well, at $45 or $50, we'll be going from being short March to being long March and buy the spread.
Where would you take delivery on March right now and do some XPITs? I mean, personally, I think 525 to 545 would be a go. So if people are going to cover these, I might just go throw some chips on the table with FC Stone and say, yeah, throw in 20. I'll take them.
Which is, interesting is that was the level that the market traded at, like whatever, a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, kind of like the clear the deck number was equivalent to that, 525, 530. And that's why I kept holding out for the board to go down there. And, I got bored. I think I just got bored.
Well, current bid's 544. And you've got May at 594. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, if I was going to bet one way or the other, I'd buy both of them, right? I mean, I would. I'd do the Texas hedge right now. Just with what I'm seeing in my world and knowing what we're selling Western species for, they're both a good deal at this point. So,
Matt, I'll say is if we close above like 595, 596 in May this week, that's going to signal, at least going to make a, attack at the 620 high. And, in my work projects up to 670, 680.
There's a gap.
That's a $100 move.
Where's the gap, Sig?
Gap at 630 to 633. I think it is 31 to 33, something in there.
Let's talk about the really, really exciting. What is Southern Yellow Pine doing right now? The contract, Charles?
Not much.
What's
we're up 350.
That's kind of fixed.
Okay.
$500 in July.
So, just a quick question: if you're sitting like I've had the experience talking to some buying groups this week, and quoting some of their members, 104 and 5/8, 2x4, and all that, and they all some of them wanted to buy $30 or $50 under today's price, and then we see the big retail buyers wanting to pay last week's price and have it shipped quickly. If you're sitting in a retail buyer's seat right now, what are you looking at, and what's your suggestion to give them an edge if they've got business sold forward all the way out into out 2 or 3 months and they're not fully covered on it? Should they speculatively hold it short? What would you talk about in the different species to give somebody an edge if they're a buyer right now?
When I'm not sure about the future and I've got risk involved, I usually cover half of it.
I was going to say, yep.
And then I hold on to the other half and worry about it later. And that seems to have been a successful strategy for me for years and years and years. And so, do I make as much money doing that in the long run? No. Do I lose as much money doing that in the long run? No. You're basically just kind of insuring yourself. If things get a lot harder to buy, you're going to make a little bit of money on the front end and give some back on the back end. But if they get easier to buy, then you'll just make money on all of it. And you'll regret that you bought it on the front end, but you still made the money. And so you don't go broke doing business that way. It's just a very boring and moderate way to do business that works.
Anybody else?
G-Pop looks like he's been hitting the creatine and the beach workouts. You're looking pretty steadily down there, buddy.
Yeah, I've been bulking up. Yeah, I gotta tell you, that way.
The gun show.
It's that way over there. I gotta tell you, the creatine has been great. You know what? It really, Matt. I am nowhere near as sore like in the day or two after lifting than I usually am. That's been a big game changer. Big game changer.
It's also great for sleep too, especially if you're lacking some. It really helps bridge that.
That's funny.
Which is I really appreciate. Yeah, I had a good sleep score last night. My aura was very happy with me. It hasn't been happy with me lately, but it was happy with me last night.
I'm curious, Sig, if you keep track of other building materials, and we talk about lumber all the time. Has OSB done anything, or like what about all the other things that go into the construction of a home that, LVLs and timbers? I know timbers are way up over here in the West, so I don't know how that affects yellow pine, but they're drastically higher.
Yeah, I did some work, timbers, yes. Engineered wood is still oversupplied, but I haven't kept track of the shutdowns, so, I'm not sure how poorly the pricing is. I'm sure it's picking up a little bit because nobody was running full bore in the last, since November, I will say, or December. But OSB is interesting. What I discovered there was, Louisiana Pacific used to make 4.4 billion square feet a year. And since I was obviously the head of the OSB and plywood and MDF and all that, so I know those numbers from way back. I looked at their earnings and I realized that 80%, almost 78% of all of Louisiana Pacific's production is siding. And so they only now make 22% of commodity boards, which would be then roughly $1 billion, right? We'll call it.
Yeah.
So we're missing $3 billion there because siding is not a OSB commodity like we want it to be. And then second of all is you had some new plants come on while you had some Canadian plants shut down. You had Weyerhaeuser and Tolko both take their oversized mills in Alberta down because of the 10% duty. So what I see is, OSB is tight. Martco is the big player in the South, obviously these days on commodity board. He doesn't have a lot of value-added boards. And then you have the, tech board, which is insulation. Back of it has got a foil on it. So there's less and less commodity 7/16s being produced in comparison with, let's say 10 years ago. And I don't mean that in a big way. I just mean we've shut down 2 Canadian plants. We've built 1 or 2 plants here in the United States. We've reduced Louisiana Pacific by 3 billion feet, right? And the total consumption is around 38 billion feet. So, there's some changes going on there. Import boards can't come in right now. It's too expensive, a too cheap a market for them. So OSB looks pretty tight going forward, as it has been. So that's my OSB story.
I think it's going to be a fascinating year that we're all going to look back on going, what happened exactly? Because it's got some shades to it that are starting to, like maybe I was too negative last week. We'll see.
I know
it's hard to get super excited because there's so many unknowns.
Matt, that makes up for all the times you were way too positive.
Do you know why I was? Do you know why I can tell how I can tell I was too negative last week? Greg, can I tell him a story? What you told me?
Go ahead.
So I was like a little negative on trucking, and I was bitching, and I'm like, and I was trying to make my problems Greg's problems. He said, "Hey, man, like, I don't have to do this anymore. I can just shut my thing off and go home." And I'm like, damn it. That's like the freaking grenade he pulled on me right there. Like, I'm like, do I apologize or I just let it go? So this is me apologizing, Greg, but I'm like,
I mean, it took you a whole week to do it. I felt bad after I did that because I knew that like I had totally effed you up on it. And and then I know I called you back like 45 minutes later and completely changed the subject, like we had never even had the conversation.
I know you did. I know you did. He was
because I felt bad.
Yeah, no, it's like, hey, I can just shut her down and you can deal with this yourself. I'm like, yeah, no, I'm good with that. Let's not do that.
Hey, if we're dealing with this kind of stress and discomfort right now, think about our customers.
No, that's a good point. Actually, Greg's actual thing was, I was having fun up till right now. And,
that sounds like something he would say.
And today,
I can see him take his glasses off and
I
lean
don't
back
want to
in
do
his
it.
chair.
and if I remember, and today I'm not having fun. And if this continues, I'm just not doing this anymore.
Well, Greg's G-pop is of an age where he can just say, this has been a great run. I'll catch you on the backside.
Yeah, I don't.
My wife accuses me of like, yeah, you've crossed that threshold on the filter. I go, I have, sister. It's you. It's you.
That's living on
your wife says whatever she wants to now.
That's living an authentic life, man. That's when you have no filter. That's when you get authentic.
Hey guys,
am I too young to be authentic?
You know what? I'm just still licking my wounds on like the completely march down 17 at 5:45. I knew that was going to happen, and I just like wimped out and like threw in the towel like a day too early. It's very, very personal. I'm gonna go do something.
Well, my guess is maybe the big guys aren't EFPing right now.
I think they are.
Are they?
Yeah.
That'd be worth checking out that list then.
Well,
because now we got the spread at spread's at $40.
I'm still willing to EFP premium 16s if somebody wants to give me a call.
There you go.
All right,
cool,
guys.
All right, guys. Cool. See ya.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Appreciate it.
All right,
See you
I got to
soon.
roll.
Have a good one.
Yeah.